A very good morning to my dear students of Standard 5. The subject that we'll be taking up today is General Science. I will be introducing you to Chapter 5, How Plants Reproduce. You'll find this chapter on page 46 in your General Science textbook. It's been such a long time that we have not been to school due to the lockdown. But I'm sure you still remember our beautiful school garden with the varieties of plants that magnify the beauty of our school. So today, first of all, I will be telling you about a few basic things that you need to know before we begin this chapter. So let us start. Plants. What are plants? Plants are living organisms and they need air, water, and sunlight to grow. And photosynthesis is the process by which the plants make their food. These are the parts of a plant, as we all know. There's the leaf, the fruit, the flower, the stem, and the root. In this video, we are going to focus on the flower. I will give you more details about the parts of a flower. These are the parts of a flower: the pistil, the stamen, the petal, the sepal, and the stalk. Now, the pistil is known as a female part of the flower. It is also known as a gynoecium. It has three parts: the stigma, the style, and the ovary. The stigma is the upper part of the pistil, the style is the tube-like structure, and the ovary is the lower part of the pistil. Now, the stamen. The stamen is the male part of the flower and it is also known as the androecium. It has two parts: the upper part known as the anther and the tube-like structure known as a filament. The petal. The petal is the most beautiful part of the flower. It's colorful. Petals are attractive and they also attract insects. Then we come on to the sepal. The sepal is green in color. The sepal protects the flower when it is in the form of a bud. Then is the stalk. The stalk is the lower part of the flower, and then we have the receptacle, which is the rounded area at the top of a stem that supports the head of a flower. Now, again we have the picture of a flower. This picture has been inserted into this video to make it a little more clear about the stamen and the pistil. The stamen is the male part. It is known as the androecium and it has two parts: the anther and the filament. The pistil is the female part. It is known as a gynoecium and it has three parts: the stigma, the style, and the ovary. The pink part of this picture is the petal, which is making the flower look more beautiful. The sepal is green in color and it helps to protect the flower when it is in the form of a bud. Petals are of different colors. Now we come on to the pistil. A pistil is also known as a gynoecium, or the female part of the flower. The pistil has three parts: the upper part known as a stigma, the tube-like structure known as a style, and the lower part known as the ovary. The ovary has ovules and female cells. The stamen is also known as the androecium, or the male part of the flower. The upper part is known as the anther and the tube-like structure is known as the filament. Now this picture is the picture of the androecium and the gynoecium. As we just discussed, the structure of the stamen has two parts: anther and the filament, and the structure of the pistil has three parts: the stigma, style, and the ovary. Now we come on to pollination. What is pollination? Now, before coming on to the meaning of pollination, I would like to tell you that the anther, that is the male part of the flower, has small tiny grains called pollen grains. Pollen grains are tiny grains that are produced by the stamen of a flower. It mostly appears as fine yellow dust. Okay, so now we come on to the meaning of pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. Now, you must be thinking, how does the pollen grains get transferred from the anther to the stigma? Now, for this, there are many agents like the birds, the butterflies, the bees, wind, water, even animals. These act as agents of pollination and they help in transferring the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. And this entire process of transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower is known as pollination. In this picture, it is clearly given in 4 steps. The first step, the pollinator visits the flower to collect nectar. Who's the pollinator here? It's the bee. It may be an insect, it may be a bee or an animal. It's the one who carries the pollen grains. In step 2, the pollen on the anther sticks to the pollinator. So when the bee comes to the flower to suck the nectar, the pollen grains get attached or get stuck to the feet or the body of the pollinator. Now when the pollinator goes to the other parts of the flower, and it moves to another part of the flower, then it transfers these pollen grains to other parts of the flower like the stigma. And the pollen grains get transferred to the stigma. So the entire process of the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower is known as pollination. Your homework for today is you have to draw the stamen and the pistil in your rough notebook. I hope this video has been helpful to you. I would also request you to kindly read chapter 5 so that you'll be able to understand it better. This video was just an introduction to chapter 5 with the basic things that you need to know before we start with chapter 5. Thank you.